is a very technical course, which was not good for me. I think we'll kind of get into kind of our last discussion, which will then springboard us into a pair of other discussions. But
Yay.
yeah, so I played in a tournament today. It was it's called the WIFs tournament. It's actually it stands for the Wintry Indiana Frozen Fundraiser Series at Mosier Course today.
Yep.
It was actually a really nice day for disc golf. It was cold and it was snowy. There were a couple times where we were like, oh crap, did we lose a black disc in the snow because it got buried?
Yep.
Yeah, and then I actually almost lost my musket today and was very lucky that it had a little skid mark behind it, or else I would have never found it.
Yeah, watch out for those skid marks.
Yeah. But anyway, but yeah, so I was actually putting at the same time as Jason during my warm-up for it, and he said, I don't feel good about this one-round format because it doesn't give him the chance to warm up as much as he would like.
Yes.
He'd feel much better about a 36 or even further format, which I get for him. He is not as young as any of us are, and he's a pro. So for him, actually warming up might make a difference. But no, going back to what I said, going back to what I was actually going to say was, it was a really fun tournament. For those of you that are listening in and near the Indiana area, that series is going around, basically the whole state all the way through.
It's almost done.
Disc. Huh?
It's almost done.
No.
For the winter series?
Yeah, I thought the winter series was almost done.
It goes all the way through 327.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I played the fall series 2 years ago. I ended up winning that for intermediate, the whole overall series, without ever winning a tournament.
Yes. Well, so yeah, it's a fundraiser series. Yep. So actually, like I said, I am not a PDGA member, so the $10 tax for not being a PDGA member was waived because it's a fundraiser. Yep. For those of you in the Indiana area, whether that's Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, et cetera, you know the border states. I guess I could just say Kentucky and Illinois.
Yeah, I don't know if those guys would come up because this is mostly northern Indiana.
Yeah, looking at it, it looks like it doesn't necessarily get any further south than Indy. But
generally speaking, the fall series.
Oh no, there's a Terre Haute in here.
The fall series
that was on 1-2,
and the winter series
on 312.
Yeah, they generally they basically split the state in half. So the fall series is the Northern Indiana fall series or something along those lines, and it's basically Indy North. And I think it just makes it easier that way because you're not gonna most probably not gonna drive to Evansville, and vice versa. Those are pretty much the two furthest towns, Fort Wayne and Evansville, two major cities.
Yeah, you're not gonna
going
drive
diagonal.
that far for a seat here.
Yeah.
Which, but yeah, it was a very fun round. The card that I was on was very laid back, very chill, very, hey, we're an MA4. We're sitting here just trying to get freaking pars, man. And it was a lot of fun.
Which you did consistently, which was awesome to see.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. So I will say it was very cold. It was about 27, 28 today with the sun, very little wind. So it actually wasn't too bad. After my warm up, I shed a hoodie that I had on. But I will say one of my bogeys I took because my hands were just straight up numb. I could not feel the disc in my hand.
I remember that message. I just bogeyed. I can't feel my hand.
Yeah.
So actually it was on hole number 3. And on number 2, I could not hit a line to save my life with my forehand today, which is not good because I am more of a forehand player than a backhand player. So I end up in a ditch off my drive. I get it up onto not quite the top of the hill, but 5 feet off the top of the hill with my upshot. So I'm sitting away with a 7-foot putt. My head is below the basket on a hill that's about, for those of you listening, it's probably a 45, 50, 60 degree angle.
Yep. Sounds about
I'm sitting
right.
there and I'm just going, how the heck am I going to hit this shot? I end up on a knee, around a bush. I end up hitting the shot to save par.
Solid.
But it probably cost me, because then as I'm going to get up, I slide all the way down the hill and I put my hands out and I just drag my throwing hand right through the snow. At this point, I'm top of the card. I'm top of the box. And so I don't have time to sit there and put my hand in my pocket with the hand warmers to thaw it out. So I'm just like, here we go. I guess I'm throwing the shot and hoping that it doesn't end up down another ravine. Mm-hmm. I didn't quite hit first available. I hit kind of the bundle of really small trees that were probably constituted second available. Then I tried to throw a turnover forehand shot with absolutely no power. So that hyzered out down into a ditch. And I ended up throwing EMAT truth and getting a bogey save out of it. But I was just like, I can't feel my hands. So after I made this really nice putt, I ended up taking back-to-back bogeys because I just had no feel for my disc.
Not sure what to do with my hands right now. Winter golf
and summer golf are two different things, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah, I really enjoyed the round. But that brings up another topic. How do you guys dress for cold weather?
Layers.
Because for me, the big thing is, obviously the big thing is layers. I don't like having big bundles around me, so I actually don't like my winter coat. Today I had a thermal long sleeve, a t-shirt. I had a hoodie that I ended up shedding, as I said, after warm-ups, and then I had a vest on, and that served me pretty well. On my bottom, I had some long johns and some of those dry fit Under Armour underwear, and I didn't wear jeans. I wore more of like a khaki material almost, because once jeans get wet, they're
miserable
to dry.
They're miserable. Like,
wet jeans is miserable.
The answer for the Wisconsin weather lately is don't go the fuck outside. I mean, we've been these last couple of weeks. We've been. I think the high driving home from work the other day, like in my car, said a -3 air temperature, not including the wind chill. So the answer is just don't go outside lately.
I remember those days when I lived up there, where you're like, oh man, the high almost hit 0 today.
Yeah. When you're, like, today, I think was 14 degrees out, and I didn't even have a sweatshirt on taking the trash out because, like, it's a hot day outside at 13 degrees outside. Like,
classic Midwestern man right there.
I remember coming home
to the trash can and back. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I remember coming home when we had a stretch. When I was in Wisconsin, we had a stretch where it was like 2 or 3 weeks where the high did not hit 0. And the wind chill got down to like 45, 50 below. Like it got cold. And I came home for Christmas and it was 30 degrees outside, and I'm helping load up, someone's car after Christmas. And I'm just in a Blackhawks jersey with the t-shirt underneath. And my mom's like, put a jacket on. It's cold. I was going, Mom, it is 70 degrees warmer than what I'm used to. Literally, I went from -40 to +30. It is insanely warm out right now.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like that. But I think when I play winter golf, there's a couple things that I keep in mind. One, waterproof shoes of some sort.
Waterproof socks.
Waterproof shoes, waterproof socks, whatever it is. If your foot stays dry, you're in better shape.
Oh yeah,
without doubt. I don't care what the traction is on the bottom. Let's be fair. When you're on ice and snow, the traction doesn't matter. You're going to be slipping and sliding no matter what the traction is. Make sure your toes stay dry.
Yep.
For me, the answer is layers, but honestly, the best investment I made a couple years ago is the battery operated heat.
Yes. It's
expensive.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to dump $100 to $150 for a basic vest or a basic shirt.
Oh, you're talking about that.
But a battery operated vest, I am golfing in 20-degree weather and sweating in a vest and a long sleeve shirt. And I feel like I have my full range of motion. I also go with fleece lined pants.
Yep.
I got a couple pair of they almost look like khaki material, but they're probably closer to sweatpant material, if that makes sense, like the wind pants kind of thing.
Yeah.
They got a little bit of swish. It was a $10 Costco purchase that I purchased three of them when I had to cover hockey games because the hockey arena was always cold. So I'm like, all right, what's warm that looks professional? And so they were khaki. They were khaki-like material, but they have a nice thick fleece line.
Yes.
It was a very solid purchase. Yeah. So when I go outside, like I said, waterproof boots, some sort of fleece line pant to make sure my legs stay warm. And then I go with a battery vest or a battery undershirt to help keep my core warm. And then what I usually do is I wear a very thick pair of snowboarding gloves. And then just, the second I'm not touching a disc, I'm in the gloves again.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was another big key for me today. I am very lucky and I have a lot of experience in the cold. I'm an Eagle Scout and I work in a profession.
That's what's wrong with you.
Probably, what would you guys say, a quarter to a third at least of our time is spent outside between October and November, and then March, April, and May.
Yeah. And we're all Midwest guys. I mean, it's cold.
We're all Midwest where it gets cold, it gets wet. So the way that I do it is I do a pack of the double hand warmers in my front pockets, and then I usually somewhere have a jumbo hand warmer. I started with it in my bag or in my putter pocket, so that my putter was staying nice and warm, and I had a good feel on it. And then, like I said, once I slid through the snow, I actually put that in my throwing in my right pocket because I'm right-handed to try and warm my hand up pretty quickly. And within about within 2 holes, I was back to being able to be okay, I can grip a disc normally. I have a feel for it. I couldn't throw it worth a crap because I can never throw it worth a crap. But
you're back to throwing the same crap.
Right, exactly. I hit a birdie 3 holes later on an elevated basket because I hit a nice putt.
I hate that hole.
I hate that hole so much. Because the bottom of the basket, the bottom of the cage is about 6 feet.
6 foot.
Because I can walk under it and I'm not 6 foot.
I had to get my disc.
Oh, I have to.
It was a nasty putt. I had probably a 20 or so footer.
So really no reason you should have been running it, but why the hell not?
Yep.
It was kind of one of those okay, it's close enough that I can run it, and if I miss, I'm still gonna have a very make-hole putt, as long as I don't end up right underneath the basket and I have to reach behind me and dunk it in. It was probably a dumb decision to run it, but I ran it anyway and I made it. So
it was a good decision.
Yeah, exactly. But then, like you said, the waterproof shoes, I actually took the pair of boots that I use that I got when I was in Scouts for hiking, for really cold weather, for that crap. My feet still ended up cold after probably about 3-4 hours outside.
That's going to happen, though.
So that's 3-4 hours outside.
3-4 hours outside in snow that is probably 6 inches deep. Yes, my feet ended up a little bit wet, but I mean, for the most part, the only problem that I had with my footwear was the fact that I noticed that my shoe was untied as I went up for a putt, and I was thinking too much about tying my shoe and missed the putt.
Yep.
And that was my only other bogey was after my hands had thawed out was I missed the par putt because my shoe was untied.
Yeah.
At least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And for me, I usually I am normally a pretty warm person. So even for these colder rounds like today, if I went out, I would have had my hiking boots with my waterproof socks, both waterproof, and they're just thicker socks. They work really well. I was actually surprised. I wore them with just regular tennis shoes once, and it was kind of it was a weird feeling. It was like putting your hand in a bag and then dunking that bag in the water. Like you could feel the water coming up and feel cold, but they weren't wet. I think that's the best way to describe it. Yeah. Like if you've ever mixed up a Gatorade cooler with an ice bag.
With an ice bag.
That's kind of how it felt. Like, but my feet were warm. Like they did get a little cold, but like they were dry, so they warmed up pretty quick. So I wear that, and I'll usually put on sweatpants. Depending on how the wind's blowing, I might throw on, like I have the Under Armour Cold Gear 3.0, the stuff that you can like sit in cold weather and stay warm. So if you're moving around a lot, you're really toasty. For my upper body, I don't like having a lot of layers on, so I'll wear, I have the regular Under Armour and then a 3.0 shirt. So depending on how cold it is or how much I'm going to walk around, that's kind of what I'll wear. And then I'll throw on a sweatshirt of varying thickness. And I'll have a shirt for underneath, like a long sleeve shirt or a t-shirt, in case the sweatshirt, it gets too warm. And then I got for Christmas an electric hand warmer, a Zippo electric hand warmer, worth every penny.
My sister swears by that. She's got one and loves it.
It is. It lasts. They say it lasts 9 hours. Since I got it for Christmas, I haven't played a tournament. Well, I take it back. I did the bag tag challenge, and that was about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it actually got to the point where I'm like, I had it on low, and it was too warm. Granted, the day ended up being like, this was December 31st, and it was like 40 degrees outside. By the time like the sun, like by the time the afternoon, like in the morning warming up, it was great. After that, it just was too hot outside.
Yeah. I mean, depending on how you guys go, I would definitely suggest the battery operated shirt vest.
Yeah.
I got a pair of socks
for
Christmas.
I've seen the battery operated gloves too. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm not a vest guy. But recently I've been a vest guy because it really does help keep the core. When I've learned with the battery operated stuff, they don't necessarily heat the arms. It's more core based.
Mm-hmm.
So why not get a vest? That's what's going to be warmed anyways, you know?
Yeah.
And then for the sake of disc golf, I kind of went out and threw in it, and it's like, I can just wear a long sleeve t-shirt. Yeah, my arms are going to be a little bit cold, but if my core is warm and my hands are warm, my arms don't feel that cold, and I'd rather have that range of motion.
Yep. That's where I'm at with that. That's why I don't like a lot of layers.
The other big thing I would say is definitely keep a couple extra towels on you, and not necessarily where you normally keep your towels. I always have, the golf towel clipped on the side of my bag, but then you set your bag down in the snow, the bottom of the towel starts to get wet. After a couple holes, it gets wet.
That's why you get a cart.
Couple extra towels, even if they're just tossed in your pockets or tossed in tossed in one of the pockets in your bag, and then you switch them out.
Yep.
That's a big thing, because keeping the disc dry for two reasons. One, like you said, your hand gets cold when it gets wet. Mm-hmm. So, keeping it dry that way. And then two, then the consistency on the disc. It's landing in snow. It's landing in water. It's going to get wet. Yeah. Every single throw, it's going to act like your disc is going to act like it's playing in the rain.
Yep.
So having a couple extra towels really makes a big difference on that.
Yeah, that was a big thing today. I had my normal disc in my putter pocket that I used only for my putter and my hands. And then I kept a separate towel in my big main disc compartment. Just for, my EMAC Truth has a bunch of snow around the rim. Okay, knock it on my leg, knock it on a tree, whatever. Now I'm going to towel it off and make it, relatively dry. And I had a third towel just as this one's getting too wet. Now I'm going to trade it out.
Yep.
Yeah. I think
so it sounds like our general consensus is, if you can find a good vest that you really like, whether it's a heated vest, whether it's a regular vest, that vest gives you a lot of range of motion. Get some type of warmer, whether that's the
chemical ones or the battery ones.
A battery ones, one of those chemical ones, like like that.
Well,
the battery one is going to...
rounds you're playing. If you're playing a one-round thing, you don't need as much. If you're playing a two-round thing, do you have extra chargers for things like that? Do you have extra batteries for things like that? It's a big thing to keep in mind, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course, as always, when you're in the cold, layers.
Don't forget a hat.
Don't forget a hat. I had an Under Armour hat that kept my head. I was actually sweating at points in it, but at the same time, if I would have taken it off, my hair would have looked like it was a mess. But B, and more importantly, it always looks like it's a mess. It's fine. But B, and more importantly, I would have gotten cold real quick.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the cold weather. Do you guys have anything specific that you guys like for wet weather, for rain? I know that I've mentioned I don't, I generally only play casual rounds, a couple of tournament rounds here or there. Obviously, I'm apparently the first person to play in a tournament on this podcast this year, but but as far as rain, is there anything specific that you guys like to wear for that?
Well,
or is it, does it depend on temperature? Does it depend on the wind?
Yes, all the above. I like to, I have a waterproof coat that is just a shell. That's really nice for throwing in the rain. It gives me most of the flexibility I need. I mean, any coat that you have, but it's one of those, like, I'll sacrifice a little range of motion and adjust my swing if it means I stay dry and I can still do everything. And I also bring an obscene amount of towels. Like, Walmart brand bath towels are probably the best thing ever, because you can buy them for a couple bucks, and I don't care if they get dirty and nasty, or if I lose
if they're
one.
full of mud, throw them out after they're on. Who cares?
Yeah, or if you don't want to go with the big ones like the hand towels, I don't know. It's not a kitchen towel.
Rags?
Yeah, something between like a hand towel and the bath towel. Like, they make some that are kind of that weird size. Maybe it's just the hand towel size.
The gym towels, the kind that they always hand you at the gym that are never big enough to actually dry off with. Yes. But too big for a wash rig. Yeah.
Yes, one of those.
It's like it's enough to cover yourself, but it's not actually enough to wrap around yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big thing with me with rain, extra pairs of socks, if not an extra pair of shoes. Especially because they always need to be multiple round tournaments.
Yep.
Where the first half of the tournament you're completely soaked, and then the second half the sun pops out, but you're a drenched freaking mess.
Yep, you're dry.
I had no problem having like 6 pairs of socks in my car. I was even a tournament where it was really bad, where I actually threw an extra pair of socks in my bag, and like on hole 4 I changed my socks.
Yep.
For the one time I stepped in a giant puddle, I'm like, screw this, I'm changing my socks.
I changed my shoes in the middle of a round once.
Yeah,
I actually put them in my.
Done shoes in a round.
I did that. I changed my shoes and socks in the middle of a round one tournament, and it wasn't because of the rain. It was because of the dew, and it was such a humid day that the dew on the grass actually hung around until like 11 o'clock. Like, it wasn't
so that morning round was just soaked.
It wasn't. Yeah, it was basically like we were playing in the rain, but also sweating our asses off because it was so humid. Like, it was probably the worst of everything, because at least in the rain, you're wet, but the sun isn't out. And now it's like, okay, my disc is wet, my feet are soaked, I can't get a grip, I'm sweating my ass off. Like, I can't win.
You had 2 bad holes, and now you're just pissed off at the world.
Yeah, and it's hot and it's humid, and it was just one of those, like,
oh man.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is some sort of grip bag, some sort of clay bag.
Yes.
It's amazing what those things can. You don't need a rosin bag, you don't need the extra tack.
No.
Just something that gets your hands dry.
I've actually fallen in love with Climbers Chalk. It is.
I've heard that before.
It is amazing.
That is one of the ways to go.
Yeah.
Like, that and a grip sack are one of the ways to go.
And I have both in my bag.
Which actually, so as I mentioned, I went out shopping to one of our local pro shops this past week. And I got a couple of discs. But the thing that I actually went for was a grip sack, because I'm probably playing in this tournament. So I want something where I know that if I use it, I'm going to be able to get a good grip on my putter.
Yep.
Because that was my biggest concern, was getting a good grip on my disc. So I went out and bought a grip sack specifically for this tournament. I'll obviously continue to use it and whatnot, but
and everybody's brand is a little bit different. Their mix is a little bit different. So if you don't like whale sack,
for example, is what I have.
Yeah, if you don't like whale sack,
DD.
Yeah,
Prodigy.
The whale sacks was a big one a couple years ago with Tina and Eric Oakley, and
it still is. I don't have one.
What's the other one? The birdie
there's a
bag?
sports
Is that
sack.
the other big one?
Yeah. There's also a sports sack, which I like. It's a couple different companies use it. It's all the same. It's just rebranded.
Yeah.
And whatever mix that is, I like it. So I have one of those. and I have a DD Grandma's Dirt Bag, or whatever it's called, and then I have it's a Prodigy case essentially, but it's Climbers chalk.
Yeah,
and it was like $10.
Keep in mind, some of them are to keep your hands dry, others are to add grip.
Yes.
So it depends on what you look for. So like for the rain rounds, I'm not necessarily looking to add grip because with how wet my hands are, it's just not going to be the right texture. I just want to dry my hands off. I don't want to have it constantly soaked, feel like I've been swimming for 3 hours.
And that's what the sport sack really feels like for me.
And that's what I have is I have a sport sack,
it
which
dries
I want
your
to
hand.
say is more, is that one more clay or more
I don't know.
beads? I have one that's more clay and one that's not as much clay. And I forget which one adds a little bit of tack.
So I will say, the grip sack that I got, I really liked because I had a couple of longer putts, and when I grabbed those out, I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that my hand's not going to slip. I want to make sure that I have a good feel for it. And like I said, I just dried it off more than anything. It made my hand feel dry.
Yep.
It didn't necessarily add that chalky feel. It didn't add that rosiny feel.
It's one less thing to think about during a putt.
Right. Exactly. It's almost like a comfort blanket in that it's okay. I'm using this. I don't know how much it's actually doing,
but if it
from
works,
a placebo effect, I feel better. It's one less thing to think about. It helps that mental game.
If it works between the ears, it works.
So much. Yeah, exactly. We're all 3 medical professionals. We know a big chunk of patient care is getting the patients to buy into something will work.
Yep. And that, I was actually,
you said, Joe, if it works between the ears, it works.
I was actually surprised at, I thought the chalk bag, and the reason I kind of stayed away from a chalk bag for so long was I was like, the disc is going to slip out of my hand. I'm not going to like the way it feels, just kind of that stuff. I will say, if I don't use it, I feel weird without it. Now, I'll use it pretty much all the time because I also have sweaty hands all the time.
You're a sweaty man.
I am a sweaty boy. And but
the 2 listeners that we have left just left the podcast.
Pretty much. So what I always found funny before I started using that, everybody was complaining on humid days or rainy days, I can't get a good grip. My hand's all wet. I'm like, my superpower, sweaty hands. In the rain, it feels the same for me, but it does actually, I didn't really ever notice it all that much other than getting a bit better grip. And then, every now and then I'd have chalky fingerprints on a disc. All of a sudden I looked at my bounty and I've got a perfect thumbprint right in the middle where it goes.
I know how I'm stealing Joe's fingerprints to commit my next crime.
Feel free to take all of my student loan debt with you. That's probably a good note to end on.
I think that kind of addresses how to how to dress differently, how we would suggest attacking different conditions when it's not the the ideal 75 and sunny and no wind.
And when in doubt, layer up. You can always take layers off.
Yeah, and I know we kind of talked about it. I think a tournament prep, just in general, would be kind of a good topic to talk about in the future once we get more into the normal person tournament season that doesn't get to travel to Vegas and travel to Texas.
Or if you live in Texas
I think
we're running a little bit long for that today.
But I agree. I think this is a good transition to think about in the future for sure.
Yeah, I think that'll be something that maybe we address closer to maybe a trilogy challenge when both Joe and I play in that.
It depends when that is.
Joe and I are playing.
That could be pretty late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to get to it. Maybe get you guys up here for a little while too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So